I was watching him on the clock, and you realize he's pulling a little briefcase. Right. I almost went that. Yeah, nothing's fun. That's a new place that I got there. Let's just sit out there for a while.
Thank you for all coming here this afternoon. I appreciate it. My name is Chris Becker. I'm the Kent County Prosecuting Attorney. Before I get with my announcement, I do want to publicly acknowledge the Loyola family, their tremendous patience and understanding as this process has developed. It's been very difficult. The loss of a child causes unimaginable pain, stress, and the emotions they must be going through all of this. I deeply appreciate what they've done, especially some of their calls for peace and calm during this entire time. I think it's been tremendously beneficial for this community, and I can't say how much I appreciate what they've done in regards to that. I just had the opportunity to speak with the family, express my condolences, and tell them essentially what I'm just telling you here. I have prepared a letter in their native Swahili, because obviously this is difficult even under the best of circumstances, much less with a language barrier. So I had a letter translated into Swahili to provide to the family so they can be fully aware of what my announcement is here today. And I've conveyed that to them and their family. I also want to thank the Michigan State Police for their dedication and really doing a thorough investigation in this matter. Detective Sergeant Aaron Tubergen really did an excellent job. He's done everything I requested of him, even on some of the follow-up. And so it's made a difficult situation, obviously a little bit easier to have a partner that you can work with. Based on his investigation, based on everything he has provided to me, I've made the decision to charge Christopher Schurr with 1 count of second-degree murder. Second-degree murder is a felony offense. It is punishable by up to life in prison with the possibility of parole. As it stands now, this is merely an allegation, and as with any defendant, he is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. The elements of second-degree murder are relatively simple. First, there was a death done by the defendant, and then when the killing occurred, the defendant had one of these 3 states of mind: an intent to kill, an intent to do great bodily harm, or the intent to do an act that the natural tendency of that act would be to cause death or great bodily harm. And finally, that the death was not justified or excused, for example, by self-defense. Taking a look at everything that I reviewed in this case, I believe there's a sufficient basis to proceed on a single count of second-degree murder, and that charge has been filed with the courts as of today. Given that I filed charges, and we have all of you here today, the Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct severely limit what I can say. I'm not going to be able to get into the facts, the circumstances, the decisions I made through this process. The rules of professional conduct are pretty strict. This case needs to be tried in a court of law and not necessarily in public. So I will answer some questions. I can try and answer them, but I may not be able to, given the rules that I have to face. This case will be tried in the court. One other thing for the local media who's here, I think they cover us quite a bit. They will notice that we did not file a felony firearm charge. Felony firearm is a charge, a separate charge. It's a 2-year that is added on to whatever underlying felony is, and we very often charge it when a gun is used in a homicide. We cannot do so in this circumstance. In 1991, the Michigan Supreme Court in People versus Khoury, Khoury, ruled that a felony firearm cannot be charged against a police officer who used a gun in the performance of their duties. So that is why you do not see a felony firearm charge, as is often the case under these circumstances. It is my understanding, I've been in contact with the Michigan State Police, that Mr. Schurr has turned himself in. He has been being processed. He will be arraigned in the 61st District Court in the city of Grand Rapids. It is my understanding that arraignment will take place sometime tomorrow. I do not have a specific time or date. That is up to the court. That is a function of the court, if you will. to take care of that. So that concludes my statement. As I said, I'll take some questions. I'll answer the questions that I can. I may not be able to answer all, and I'm just doing the questions here. I'm not going to do any individual interviews after this is all completed.
Did Officer Schurr, did he talk to MSP? Did he sit down and do an interview with MSP?
I can't get into that. That would be a factual question in terms of that'll come out in court.
Mr. Becker, this incident happened on April 4th, so why did it take so long to come out with this charging decision today?
Hey, this is I just got the full report on the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So in terms of getting a complete report, I've only been, 8 days, 9 days after that. I mean, part of it was and it's not the Michigan State Police fault, it's getting the TASER report, the forensic report from the company. And, things take time, and I want to be obviously thorough. This is obviously a major decision. We've never had to use a room like this for a case here. So it's just wanting to be thorough and go over everything. But I never got that, the full report until about 8 days ago. So I don't think this is outside the bounds of what we normally do. And we have cases that sometimes takes months to charge. I have a case going on right now that took almost 6-7 months to charge. We make a decision when we have all the facts.
Mr. Prosecutor, you had said you wanted to talk with some experts in your deliberation in this case. Can you give us a hint of who you talked to? Were they use of force experts? Can you tell us who you used as sounding boards?
There were use of force experts. I'm not going to get into my witnesses in terms of case, but that I know that came up in one of the questions in terms of the Michigan State Police. I did request the Michigan State Police. I asked them if they could maybe give their expertise, but there's an issue in terms of they are kind of the fact finders, and then trying to ask them to be opinions on top of the fact finders. We were a little bit uncomfortable with that, so that's part of the reason I went kind of outside, because that's been one of the things I've heard is why not use the Michigan State Police. So we tried to use them, so we went outside of that, and you'll find out about them as this case progresses.
Chris, 2 questions. One, do you think that this case should be prosecuted in Kent County, given how much attention it's gotten? And 2, will your office be requesting that he not be given bond, or are you fine with having him released?
2 questions. Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be tried in Kent County. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know where else is it going to be tried. I mean, this is not like only Kent County media is here today. So we've handled high-profile cases, very high-profile cases. I think I'm very confident with Kent County juries to look at the facts and kind of block this out. I've handled high-profile cases, so I'm not concerned about that. In terms of the bond issue, we don't get involved in bonds in our office. I don't know how it's done in other cases or other counties, but we're not at arraignments. I don't have the bodies to cover out arraignments, so that we have a court services that comes up with a report. I can go into that, a praxis, if you will, and they come up with a prior history, mental health history, what the crime was, and they provide that to the judge. The judge makes the decision on bond. So that'll be essentially a court function, and we generally stay out of it. I can't say every single time, but generally stay out of it in the vast 99% of the cases. Let's give him next to you.
Did you consider manslaughter charges and talk about the difference between manslaughter and second degree in this case?
Obviously, we considered, we looked at everything. And so manslaughter will be a lesser included offense. The difference in manslaughter is a heat of passion. There's some sort of provocation with heat of passion. So that is something we took a look at. I felt based on the evidence I reviewed, I think a second degree murder charge is appropriate, but that is generally a lesser included instruction should it get to a jury.
Was Grand Rapids Police Chief Lindstrom informed of your decision before you just announced it?
Yes, I talked to them. Yes, I let them know yesterday.
Can you share anything with that conversation?
I will let him. I'm not going to speak for him, or I'll let him answer that. I'm sure they'll probably have something to say.
Mr. Prosecutor, given the second degree murder charge, does this make it more difficult for you to prove this in court? And do you have any concerns with the jury? We're from Detroit. We came to town to cover the plot to kidnap the governor, and 2 men were found not guilty by that jury. So what are your thoughts about a jury, and does this charge make it a higher bar for you to win in court?
No, I don't think so. Obviously I wouldn't charge if I didn't think I could prove it. I don't, be it manslaughter or second degree murder, it's almost the same. It's the same elements, to be honest with you, except that manslaughter has the negating factor. If you look at the law, that it was done under the heat of passion. So the jury will have the opportunity to consider that. So I don't think it's a higher burden. The Whitmer jury, and I'm not a federal, so I can't comment a whole lot. I wasn't involved in that, but I have faith in Kent County juries. I mean, I think they are very conscientious. They listen, they pay attention, and they're not swayed by outside influences. I think they're very considerate. So I guess they will take the seriousness and take the time to do what they think is, right in a situation like this. I really do believe that. In the back?
Sir, did you hear from the, when you presented to the family, did you get feedback from them? Were they able to express themselves to you?
Very briefly. I mean, they said thank you, and it was a very brief phone call, so I did not, really talk to them a whole lot. With the interpreter, it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I also wanted them. They didn't have an opportunity to read my letter. I said, why don't you, read the letter, and we obviously we're going to talk later since we did charge, so we'll have an opportunity to speak as this goes through. I think
This sends a message to police officers here in Grand Rapids that they can be charged with murder if they shoot someone.
I don't think so. I'm never big on sending messages with charges. I think most police officers realize that it could happen. I know there's been a lot of coverage of my prior decisions, and I look at every decision and try and take every decision as the facts of the case, and I stand by all the decisions I made in the past, and I'll obviously stand by this one. So I'm not thinking that Kent County officers or even any police officers in general thought they had a license to go out and do something like this. I think this is not a message. This is just based on the facts. I'm making a decision in this case.
I know you talked about having only 8 days since you've received the full investigation materials. I know you can't talk about what those materials were, but having all those, how were you able to make that decision in 8 days?
Well, I had a lot of the material. I mean, that was one big piece of the report. So I had a lot of it. So I was going over it. And like I said, I asked Detective Sergeant Tubergen to follow up on that. So I had a good chunk of it. So I knew what was going on. It wasn't like I was just starting from fresh 8 days ago. So this was just kind of, okay, I got the final thing. And it is a process in our office. I mean, this is, it's my decision ultimately. But I've consulted with, attorneys in my office. I've consulted with attorneys outside my office. I've consulted with people I respect. I think I've done everything I could to be as thorough, and it's, Scripture says that decisions are, best made when they're made in in a group, and I tried to do that.
What do you think the reaction is going to be from people out there on the streets in this news?
I think it's going to be, I think it's split, to be honest with you. I mean, I think there's been this, I think the general consensus is I think there's a huge amount of community pressure that thinks I should charge, and if I don't charge, something's going to happen. But I mean, literally just before I came over here, I got an email from somebody saying, I don't think you should charge. So there's a lot of people that think that this should not be charged. And so I'm very mindful of that. I hope the public reflects the care and concern I took. This was not a quick or a decision I took lightly. And so we'll see how the public reacts.
What can you tell us about the role that Taser played and what that report said regarding?
Not much. You're for two. I mean, not much. I mean, obviously, we've seen the video. The Taser obviously played a role. That's why I was waiting for that forensic report. So it played a major role that I wanted to be sure what I was seeing reflected it was in that report. So I can say that, but how that plays out, it was a major piece. That's about all I can say, I guess.
Can you talk about how thorough your office was? Because again, this happened back on April 4th, and people in the community were basically saying, charge this officer.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys, took your time before you decided to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we try and be thorough all the time, and that's one of the things I try and tell any new assistant prosecutor that starts in this office. The charging decision is the biggest decision made, because right now that name's out there. And whatever happens, that name's going to be out there in media searches and everything else. So we got to be careful every time. So in thoroughness, we wanted to get all the reports, look at all the evidence, follow up. We don't, rare in a case like this is we just get a report and, okay, make a decision. There's a lot. And officers, you're not, it's like, is there an officer over there? No. Officers will say, that we're, hey, go follow up on this. It's rare that we don't do that. So that's what we try and do in making a decision, because we know this is a major step. That can't be taken back. I mean, they could ultimately be found not guilty, and that would happen, but that's still, they got to go through this process. So we try and do as thorough a job as we can.
Given the elements and the circumstances of this case, and I asked this to the chief the day he released the videos, is this Michigan's version of George Floyd?
I'll let for the media to decide. I'm not going to make that call. I'll leave it up to you.
I have a question about the video release. Before the video was released, you had said that you were worried about it potentially affecting jurors' view of what happened, but also potentially altering the recollections of witnesses. So, two-part question: did you encounter that at all with witnesses in the investigation, and do you still have that concern? about potential jurors?
I definitely still have the concern because obviously it's going to make jury selection. I'm always amazed when you get to a jury selection when you have a major media case and how people don't. They're like, oh, I haven't heard of it. I kind of remember it. I think that's not going to be quite the case here. Everybody's going to have seen it. So I think that will be an issue, no question. In terms of altering, it's hard to tell. I think I do have some concerns. I could probably discuss those a little bit more after this is all done. If you file that away for whenever this case gets done, because I think there is at least one area that it did. But beyond that, it's hard to tell what we got. Most of the witnesses before that was released. So I think that's helped. But I think there may be some concerns.
Mr. Prosecutor, are you going to handle this case yourself or are you going to hand it to us?
We'll take one more question.
I know that you had said you're not big on sending messages and talking about law enforcement, but what message do you feel like this sends to the community?
I hope it sends that we take these cases seriously. I think, and I go on and speak, is nothing different than I said before in public, is that everybody thinks, the prosecutors are essentially an arm or just a branch of the police. And we're not. We are our own entity. We have a duty to enforce the law, be it on police or the public. And there's very often, we disagree on cases, we disagree on things that happen. We're a separate entity, and our duty is public safety. We work a lot with them, but we don't work for them. And I think law enforcement in Kent County understands that. We understand that. And so that's, hopefully the public takes that and understands that and maybe dissuades, some of the stereotypes that we've been seeing over the past couple of months.
Thank you.
One more quick one. I'll give him one more quick one.
In the range of options that you had, is this second-degree murder at the top? Is
Yes.
there anything above that?
The only thing above second-degree murder is first-degree murder, and there's not a sufficient basis. Premeditation, deliberation just weren't there. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
America's beverage companies are working together
to deliver more great tasting options
with less sugar or no sugar at all.
In fact, today, nearly 60% of beverages sold contain 0 sugar.
More choices,
less sugar. BalanceUS.org.